Oil. Throughout history, America's political leaders have recognized the nation's need for oil. This addiction, that began 70 years ago, has only since been growing. The United States has grown to be a very dependent country when it comes to oil, yet it continues to have a constant thirst for more, and more, until eventually it is just an addiction. But what exactly is an addiction? An addict is enslaved to something. And sadly, not only America, but the entire world is enslaved to oil. In 1945, the world was in the midst of World War II. As is well known, the victory of World War II went to the United States and its allies. But what was the cost of this victory to the United States? Out of 7 billion barrels of oil consumed by the Allied forces during the war, the United States provided 6 billion barrels, approximately one-third of the entire country's oil reserves. It was because of World War II that the United States became aware of its dependency on oil. On February 14, 1945, FDR attended a meeting with King Abdul Aziz Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia. During their conference, they developed an agreement. In exchange for an exclusive right to develop Saudi Arabian oil, the United States offered protection to the Saudi royal family. To this day, every American president since FDR has honored the terms of this agreement. As the industrial world has continued to expand and develop, the global need for oil has also expanded. This need for oil led to the creation and application of the Nixon Doctrine. This doctrine, which allowed the United States to advance billions of dollars in weapons to Middle Eastern countries such as Iran and Saudi Arabia, ensured the constant flow of oil from the Persian Gulf to the U.S. However, in 1979, the Iranian Shah was overthrown, which forced the United States to serve the role of policemen in the Middle East in order to protect their precious oil from any anti-American regimes. On December 24th of that same year, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, setting the stage for the United States' relations with Osama bin Laden. The United States gave weapons and financial aid to the Mujahideen, or Holy Warriors, in the fight against the Soviet Union. A year later, in the State of the Union address, President Carter proclaimed, "Let our position be absolutely clear. An attempt by any outside force to gain control of the Persian Gulf region will be regarded as an assault on the vital interests of the United States of America, and such an assault will be repelled by any means necessary, including military force. In other words, America would not hesitate to use the United States Armed Forces in order to secure our nation's interest in oil." Since the United States had no force in the Middle East, Carter created the Rapid Deployment Joint Task Force, which was designed to protect the Persian Gulf region. This task force is now known as the Central Command. On August 2, 1990, Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq, led his military across the border into Kuwait towards the Saudi Arabian oil fields. This posed a huge threat on the national interests of the United States, because if Saddam Hussein, a dictator, were successful in his actions, he would have control of the world's oil supply. Osama bin Laden petitioned that the kingdom's protection be left in Muslim hands under his leadership. King Fahd sided with the United States and allowed the U.S. troops to enter the kingdom. This was directly in line with the Carter Doctrine. Osama bin Laden openly berated Saudi Arabia's need for the United States military. He spoke out openly against the government of Saudi Arabia. In an attempt to silence bin Laden, the kingdom banished him. These actions were the basis for Osama bin Laden's acts of terrorism against the United States, the country that sought to fight in his holy land because of their dependence on oil. However, the goal of the United States is not to steal the oil or take over other countries, but rather to reform the governments of these countries to make them more cooperative to American interests. Oil. It's a sign of progress, protection, and most of all, wealth. That is why it is global.